Welcome to the festive episode. Like last year, Geoff and I are going to take a December issue of a magazine and try to turn it into some kind of show. This time we've picked Computer and Video Games from December 1983. The cover embraces the season, Geoff.
Yeah, well, kind of. It's not an Ollie Frey cover, is it?
I knew you were going to say that. You're a Crash fan, aren't you?
I am a Crash fan. We're all Crash fans.
Who's eating the apple? Is that always at the Left for Father Christmas? Who knows?
It actually looks like it's the cat.
It does, yeah.
What's that computer he's playing on?
I don't know any
Could
computer
it be a dragon?
It could be a dragon, possibly. I do like the touch of the spaceship from Arcadia in the window. That's good. We'll be coming back to Arcadia a bit later on. On to the news then. And a new television show will be broadcast soon on Central Television called The Magic Micro Mission. It will be for young people to explore computers, including applications, development and games. It will have fun, jokes and costumes, and be set on a spaceship 5,000 light years from Earth. Oh dear. I had not heard of this before, but surprisingly it's been preserved on YouTube and it's very, very 80s. In the first episode, on board their spaceship, full of kids and adults dressed like some sort of failed characters from Doctor Who, they review various games, including Jetpack. Have you watched any episodes?
I have. I watched them all because you sent them to me on YouTube, and I thought I'll have a look. And it's kind of compulsive viewing once you've watched the first one. It's not very good.
Once you've seen what a car crash it is, you just want to watch more.
Jetpack here.
It's a superb game, yeah. It's really original and
superb. Did you really say that?
Yeah, it's really easy as well. Well, easy to pick up and really entertaining to play. So I'm really enjoying it.
And even the kids get to talk about games they know nothing about.
It's got 3 screens in all.
Oh, has it? So it's not quite like the arcade game then?
No, the arcade game's only got 1 screen.
The arcade game obviously has more than 1 level. Oh dear. In episode 5, Automata and the Pieman make an appearance.
Well, thank you very much for being on our show. It's a pleasure for us to be here with all these young people dressed in second-hand underwear and bin liners. My name is Uncle Groucho, you've been a fat cigar, and this is the world-famous bit of a cult, the Pieman.
I like the professor guy with the glasses who would give you the facts about computers.
Chapter 4 is rather super. It's all about bits and bytes and binary numbers. And old Prone's been egging me on.
More news. Ocean are to release a Burger Time clone named Mr. Wimpy. A tie-in with the famous fast food chain obviously misdirects copyright and also gives the game a bit more prominence. You do have to get past the first stage though before you can get to play the game proper, and it's a very annoying first stage as well. Have you tried this one?
I have. I hate that first stage.
It's so random.
It's really annoying. The thing is, once you get past that, it's not a bad Burger Time clone. But why did they have that first stage in? If that's the way the staff in Wimpy have to collect their ingredients, no wonder it takes so long to get a burger there.
Shouldn't they get pest control in?
They definitely should get pest control in. It doesn't really make you want to go to Wimpy and have a burger, does it?
There's a new games writing tool called The Scope, or so it seems from the initial paragraph, but it turns out to be a compiler. Another new Spectrum game, Gold Rush from Thorn EMI. Working in the mines of Auron, you have to place platforms on screen that will change the direction of falling nuggets to try and get them into the baskets, all the time being chased by a skull. This is a 16K game, but has no sound at all. A new light gun is available, more accurately the Stack Light Rifle. It gives that rifle range feel and comes with 6 games. Well, it does if you get a different version than the Spectrum one, that only came with 4. I'm not sure you were impressed with this when we did the Spectrum show live.
I enjoyed putting it together. It didn't work very well, but I enjoyed putting it together.
You fixed it, didn't you? Because the clip on the butt didn't work properly, so you sorted it out.
Didn't we apply some WD-40 to it? WD-40 fixes everything. Just square W. If anyone's got Stack Light Rifle and having trouble with it, just spray some WD-40 on it, and that will fix it. Just tips from the Spectrum Show.
We will not be held responsible for damage to you or your equipment. On to Designer of the Month. This month, it's the famous llama-loving coding guru Jeff Minter. After a brief story about how he learnt to code games, it's on to his favourite things. Favourite food, liver and onions. Favourite drink? Coke, Guinness and wine. A man's got good taste. Favourite TV programmes? Not the 9 o'clock news. Favourite computer programme? Hover Bother, Repton and Styx. Countries visited? America, France and Spain. Pets? 2 cats and an Afghan hound named Woody. Ambitions? To write better games. Well, he certainly achieved that one. Favourite pop groups? Pink Floyd and Genesis. This was back in the day when we knew the names of people that wrote the games, not like today. I met Geoff at a retro event, I think it was Manchester, and had a good chat to him about the Spectrum. Very friendly, approachable and knowledgeable. Didn't you meet him on a bus?
It was on a tram. It was going to Play Expo in Blackpool. I was getting the tram up to the Norbreck Hotel, and Geoff and his gang were getting on the same tram. I had a chat to him. I agree, he is very approachable. He's a really nice guy.
Still on the games news, and Abex have released their newest game for the Spectrum, Krakatoa. Not much detail though. I think you'll like this one, Geoff.
I did. I love Krakatoa. I think it's it's a hidden gem. It is an underappreciated game. When people do their top games, it never ever features. Except for mine, in my top 100, it was 14.
Right, okay.
Beating quite a few games that get a lot more plaudits than it. No, it's superb. The only problem with it is the controls. The controls aren't very good and aren't even on the cassette inlay. The only way to find out the controls is wait a bit after you've loaded it, and then they flash up on a screen far too briefly. Why I think of it as a cross between Defender and Scramble, because you've got men to rescue, but you've also got kind of missiles coming along and bombs to drop and things like that.
And you've got to protect the ship. Yep. There's a submarine and all sorts.
Yeah. And it has the most brilliant high score music. It's got really, really good high score music. I used to play it again and again and again and keep trying to get the highest score just to hear the high score music.
Bug Bite have some releases too. Birds and the Bees. Collect nectar and avoid all kinds of weird things. Graphics allegedly by Matthew Smith. Any comments on this one, Geoff?
Paul, you told me what we were going to do for this and what games to play, so I went back and played them all, to be honest.
Okay.
And I didn't think I was going to like Birds and the Bees as much as I did. I really enjoyed playing it. It was quite a lot of fun. It's tricky. I like the momentum of the bee. I don't normally like games that have too much momentum.
No, I thought that made it really difficult because there are the other birds. Some of the other stuff can move really, really fast, and you've got no chance of getting out of the way.
But it almost makes it a strategy. You've got to plan ahead and work out what you're gonna go. Those big birds that home in on you. Well, they're all big birds actually. The birds that home in on you. You've kind of got to take them to the top of the screen and then go down or do the opposite. At least they have momentum as well.
There's a new adventure from Application Software, Dennis Through the Looking Glass, a political satirical game. I have a copy of this, but I've never played it. The game is a text-only adventure and was written using the quill. It has strange commands. For example, if you want to examine something, you have to type look at. And there are many replies and messages that appear in rhyme. The game also has a limit of 10 moves before it ends if you haven't found anything to drink. A nod at the habits of Dennis Thatcher, I think. Arctic Computing are waiting for the winner of their Crack It prize game, which is £10,000. You have to use the clues to find the location of a bank holding the cash, and you'll be flown there to collect it. There are 12 clues, and they are the typical cryptic message things that you find in most real-world treasure hunt games. Not for me, and I'm not even sure the prize was claimed. There's no mention of a winner anywhere. Are you a fan of prize games?
I don't know. I'm a fan of good games, so... It was a prize game, wasn't it?
Yes, didn't you win a helicopter flight or something?
Yeah, you did, didn't you? So, yeah, okay. That one in particular, yes. That's the only one I can think of that I ever played. I didn't play... What was a really big, long adventure?
There was Pymania. There was Eureka.
Eureka, that's the one I was thinking about. Never played that. And I wouldn't have even attempted that because I wasn't very good at adventures. What was the one where you got some golden...
Golden Sundial, that was Pymania.
Ah, was it? Okay.
Did
anyone win that?
Yes, 2 people from Ilkley won it.
Oh, cool. I do wonder if some of these prizes people still have. I remember, I'm going back to Crash again. Crash had a competition for mapping Attic Attack and Saberwolf, and you got a really, really nice prize.
Yeah.
If you won. And I wonder if they still exist. Just imagine that came up on eBay. I mean, if you think how much things like the ROM cartridges of things like Cookie and Jetpack go for, just think how much those things would go for on eBay these days. And it's probably sitting in someone's loft somewhere, or ended up getting thrown out in a dustbin or in a skip.
People won't know what it is. They'll just think it's one of those ornaments that their gran or their mother or their auntie had on the shelf, and they just threw it in the bin. BSS have released Guardian. You are in a space prison and have to stop the criminals from escaping. This is really a Tempest clone, but with weird Dodge the Meteors section thrown in. And big news, Sinclair have released Interface 2 for mail order only. We all know this device, with the ROM slot and 2 joystick ports. They're not Kempston though, but the article says the interface ports are better, because they support 2 joysticks. Okay, any of the games at this time support 2 joysticks? Probably not. And all of the 10 games that were released for Interface 2 didn't support 2 joysticks either. Okay. I like how the article says, the introduction of joysticks may turn some of the software houses away from making programs compatible with other makes of joystick. It is likely that the Sinclair official interface will become the standard. No again. I don't think I've asked you your opinion on Interface 2, Geoff.
It wasn't as good as the RAM Turbo. Because the RAM Turbo did everything the Interface 2 did and more. Because it could be a cursor interface and it could be a Kempston interface.
What do you think about the overall concept of ROM games, though?
They were good. They were a bit pricey at the time. So, especially as you could only have a 16K game. So 15 quid for a 16K game just was, And of course, the Interface 2 did introduce yet another joystick standard to the Spectrum.
As if we didn't have enough.
Yeah, you already had, Kempston and Cursor and
ProTech, Fuller, all sorts.
Yeah.
On to the letters then. Arcadia and high score tables in magazines are up for conversation. The version of Arcadia on the VIC is different to the one on the Spectrum, so the reader claims. So why group them together in the same high scores? Apparently you can pause the game on the Spectrum, but gameplay-wise they appear very similar. I don't know how you'd pause Arcadia on the Spectrum. I've tried and there's no keys to do it as far as I'm aware. You're not keen on Arcadia?
I'm not. The first thing that puts me off is the sound.
Yeah, I think the sound's really good.
It's horrible. The sound reminds me. Remember you used to get those mechanical games? Think of something like Astro Wars.
Oh yeah.
But it was mechanical. So you'd have you'd have one or two. Think of it was almost like Space Invaders, but it would literally be mechanical, and you pressed a button and a missile shot from your base, and it was literally a mortar driving it on a belt up the screen.
Okay.
And if you got shot or you shot one of the enemies, you get this kind of really horrible screeching noise, and it's exactly the same as the thrust noise in Arcadia. No, I don't like the noise. Then I don't like the really, really flickery graphics. The graphics flicker like anything.
And Jetpack has problems, apparently. A reader points out that Jetpack should be excluded from things like high score tables because of a bug. Yes, it's that well-known 4th level trick, where by standing on the middle platform, forces the jets to keep crashing and upping your score. Game reviews. And in the early days of computer and video games, the game screenshots were on one page with the actual reviews further on. The challenge was to spot which one of the screenshots were from the Spectrum. And looking at these, I would guess Ant Attack, Barmy Burgers, and maybe Bewitched. Although from the names, I now know which are correct, but I didn't back then. Ant Attack then. We all know this is a brilliant game. But what does the magazine have to say? Well, the intro on the cassette is published here. That's not really a review, they're just copying what it says on the inlay. After a few paragraphs though, they say, another interesting effect is the 3D graphics. If you run behind a building, you disappear. Wow. And they call the graphics interesting. At least, though, they add at the end, the best I've seen on the Spectrum. I'm sure you've played Antidote, Geoff.
So I went back and played it,
Yeah.
and I hadn't played it very much anyway. I got a bit bored very quickly.
Really?
Yeah, when I realised that you can just outrun the ants, so instead of trying to throw bombs at them or jump on them, you just keep. And I was just running around for it, just trying to find the person to rescue.
You know you can switch views though, don't you?
Yeah, I did. That just got confusing.
And you've got a little radar that turns green if you're heading in the right direction. Yeah.
And I think the best way I can sum it up is when I went back and played it, I can see why it didn't have the impact that, say, Night Lord did a couple of years later.
It did have a big impact for when it came out.
I mean, technically, it's really, really impressive and it's really, really smooth, but there's not a lot of gameplay there.
Sacrilege. People will be turning off.
And there's too many keys.
There are a lot of keys, yes. Barmy Burgers is another Burger Time clone, this time from Blabby. The reviews keep calling it Burger Time though. The keys used to control the game were criticised, using the cursor keys, which they say is confusing. One very interesting point is that they mention problems with the first version and that a second version will be released, or has been released. The differences are that there are better graphics for the chef, a loading screen, and a better mechanism for using the pepper. Version 1 also has a spelling mistake on the game's title on every screen, and I'm assuming that's the apostrophe, in burgers. Although all versions I could find online seem to be version 1. Has anyone got version 2 of this game? Geoff, have you played this, or even the arcade equivalent?
Yes, I played Barmy Burgers, and yes, I played Burger Time.
Okay. And impressions
Burger
of
Time
impressions
is, Burger Time is infinitely superior to Barmy Burgers.
Well, it would be, wouldn't it, really?
It's a very back in the day character-based scrolling. By the way, when I played it, I couldn't find a key that would give me kind of a pepper equivalent.
Right, okay. Well, there is one.
Ah, right. That might have limited my enjoyment of the game a little bit. It's not bad, but funnily enough, going back to Mr. Wimpy was a better Burger Time clone than this by a long way.
Gridrunner for the Spectrum, a Geoff Minter game, produced by Salamander Software and published by Quicksilver. It's a bit like Centipede. It's shooting action all the way. They say the graphics are excellent and as good, if not better, than the Commodore 64 version. And that's the end of the Spectrum game reviews. Quite a lot for a multi-format magazine. The video games section concentrates on consoles. And then we move on to the player's guide to the Micro. Microcomputers are reviewed so you can make your mind up what to spend your Christmas money on. Each machine has a list of specifications, along with optional extras, details about built-in languages and peripherals, and of course a small conclusion. The BBC concludes with, good if you can afford one. Okay. The VIC-20 is called elderly. The Commodore 64 says if you can afford £285 then this is a good buy. The Atari 6 and 800 XL has over 1,000 titles already available for it if you want a gaming machine. The Auric 1 has ROM problems, and a keyboard, they say, only suitable for one-finger typists. And the Spectrum? Well, they start with, there's no doubt the Spectrum is a winner, so that's the conclusion. There's no mention of the massive peripherals for the machine, they only list Sinclair ones. This sort of indicates that there was not much else, which is incorrect. But the end quote I think I like. They say, it's the Micro that every other manufacturer wishes they had produced. Too right. And now on to the Spectrum Top 10. However, it's not really the top 10 selling games. This is a list of the best games released over the last 12 months. Let's work backwards like they do in the charts. Starting at number 10 is Splat from Incentive Software. A brilliant game.
Yeah, it's a brilliant game. Splat. Absolutely superb. Very unique. I can't think of any other games like it.
No, the maze moves and you don't. It's brilliant. And it's got really good speech as well.
Yeah, it has. Yippee! Only £5.50 as well. Bargain.
At number 9 then, Scrabble from Scion. I I'm not a fan of Scrabble in any way, shape or form, board game or otherwise, but I admire what they've done and how much they've got in there.
I agree. And the best thing about this is, not being a fan of Scrabble and being rubbish at it, you can put any letters down you want and just say, yes, that is a word. And it'll believe you. If you're playing against the computer, much better than playing against a human, because they go, no, show me in a dictionary. $14.95 for that seems quite steep. There's loads of them on eBay saying that they're rare.
Talking of rare, at number 8, we've got Trans Am by Ultimate Play the Game. Although I think there's mixed up here. It says Shades of Mad Max. I don't really think there's anything to do with Mad Max, is there?
Well, it's post-apocalyptic. If you read the story behind it, it's post-apocalyptic type thing. So you're a lone driver, and the ones that are trying to crash into you and stop you are the baddies. A bit like Mad Max.
Okay.
Yeah, very tenuous link, but it kind of, yeah.
At number 7, Flight Simulation, again by Scion. I'm not a fan of flight sims at all.
No, I'm not. I did spend a bit of time playing this as a kid, but I just found that you ended up leaving your Spectrum on and walking away while it flew somewhere.
At number 6, Penetrator, yes, from Melbourne House. What a fantastic game, and built-in level designer.
Yep. You can make everything completely flat and then think, oh, I can just fly along the bottom of the landscape shooting things, but you can't because of that mechanic where if you tap forward quickly, it shoots. Because you end up going forward too much and crashing into things. Yeah, but an absolutely fantastic game. I mean, a very, very good early Scramble clone. I can't think of any better.
At number 5, Jumping Jack from Imagine.
Another great game.
Another great 16k game. Simple idea, but very addictive.
Yeah, very, very. Shows you don't need fancy graphics to make a good game.
Talking of fancy graphics, at number 4, The Hobbit from Melbourne House. It changed the way people thought about adventures and the Spectrum.
It did. And this one is $14.95 as well.
Yes, it was expensive.
But much more worth the $14.95 than Scrabble.
And
because you got the book with it.
In the original version, you got the book, which I still have my original book that I got with it.
Oh, cool. Do you have the original?
Yes,
complete version?
I do.
Oh,
yep.
Cool.
Sadly, it didn't come in a complete box. You get a Ultimate Play the Game style cardboard box with nothing on it. You got the book attached to it, and then you got the leaflet on the front, and then it was all shrink wrapped. So when you unshrink wrapped it, all you had to show was a black cardboard box with the game inside it, a leaflet and a book, and none of them sort of fitted together. So you could, if you put it on your shelf, it's just a black box. At number 3, Arcadia. Oh dear, you'll be disappointed with that one.
There weren't many good games back then, were there? So I can kind of see why people like it. I just don't.
Okay. At number 2, Manic Miner. You must be pleased with that one.
Well, what game could possibly beat Manic Miner? It must have to be an amazing game to beat Manic Miner into number 2, wasn't it?
Must be. I wonder what it could be. Yes, number 1, Jetpack, as you can see. Yes, I agree with that, definitely. And remember, this is 1983, Christmas 1983.
Yeah.
If you read the information that I failed to read, it says these are the games that they've reviewed in the past 12 months, and they're their favourites.
All right, okay. And they're not actually numbered, are they? So it could be this is in no particular order.
Yes, it could
Jetpack
be. Yeah.
Wasn't number 1. But let's assume Jetpack's number 1 just for you, Paul.
Thank you. The Adventure Column. Did you ever read any adventure columns, or in fact play adventure games?
I did play a few adventure games. I played The Hobbit, really enjoyed it, managed to complete it back in the day.
Unlike me.
And I remember, I think the first time I got to the dragon, I got fried by it. The next time I got to the dragon, Bard tried to shoot it and missed, and we both got fried by it. And I think the third time, I carried Bard to the dragon, asked him to shoot it, and he did. The other game I remember playing and really, really enjoying was Mad Martha.
Oh, yes.
It's certainly not the most sophisticated adventure anyway. It was just fun. Every time you do something wrong, Mad Martha comes and kills you.
I don't think it's aged very well, has it?
No, but it was fun.
Okay.
But adventure columns, yes, I used to read Derek Brewster's in Crash. I quite enjoy reading about the games, but never really played any.
I used to read the one in Popular Computing Weekly from Tony Bridge, and sometimes this one, and I even bought Micro Adventurer magazine. I loved playing a good adventure game, but wasn't particularly good at them. This is where online gaming sprung from, for me at least. Micro Adventurer used to cover mud and sometimes shades, and as soon as I got my modem, I was straight into Shades, the game within Micronet 800. I couldn't afford to keep calling them mud numbers, it got very expensive. I spent many hours on Shades, and you can play it right now online if you really want to. It's very engrossing, and let's admit it, very time-consuming. Brilliant if you like text adventures. Arcade Action then, the section for arcade games. I used to read this too, although I was too scared to actually play the real games in real arcades. Laser games are covered here, and Dragon's Lair. Didn't you do a video about this?
I did. I did a walkthrough. I completed it.
On the arcade version?
Yep.
Wow, not the Spectrum version then, which was terrible.
No. Yeah, I got all the way through. I actually enjoyed it. The Laserdisc game when I was a kid, I mean, didn't have a clue what to do. You mostly watched other people play. And kind of failing after a couple of screens. But yeah, it's quite fun to play and get through. It's taken me, 30, 40 years or something to be able to complete it since seeing it and first trying it.
A nice feature about games designers. Quicksilver's Games Designer gets a page covering sprites, sound and games design, and it does point out that you can't save games as standalone titles, which means you can't really sell them. The Quill is next. We all know that program. Create your own adventure games. Initially text only, and then the Illustrator came along. A lot of commercial games were made with this. And Herg from Melbourne House, but they didn't have a copy to review, so they just write about what they've been told, really. They say it sounds like Games Designer. Well, it's not. Interesting last paragraph, though, forgetting that games from Herg and Games Designer can't save out standalone titles. Geoff, did you ever try any of these, or fancy writing your own games?
I didn't. I remember seeing them and looking. There was always the advert for one called White Lightning.
Yeah.
That looked really, really good. But it was another $14.95, and if I got to, once I'd saved up about £5, £6, £7, I'd just buy a game rather than trying to write one myself. I tried a few in BASIC, but I remember getting frustrated that they weren't quick enough, and then thinking I need to learn machine code.
You do know that White Lightning was used to develop one of the worst games in history, don't you?
What was that?
Squidge.
I'm so pleased now I never saved up that £15 to buy White Lightning.
I type in then, Breakout, and this is a typical basic version of Breakout, but sideways on. Being basic, things move slowly and in character squares. It's playable to a certain extent, and a lot better than some of the other simple typing games from other magazines. The collision detection is a bit hit and miss, which is sometimes very annoying.
Yeah, I agree, the collision detection's crap. But other than that, once you get used to it, it's quite... I find myself kind of having another go and really... I'm going to say enjoy... Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was strangely fun to play. I like the way that it's a kind of horizontal view instead of a vertical view of Breakout. If some clever basic person can sort out the collision detection, I think it would be a much better game. It wouldn't be too bad at all.
The Bug Hunter section that brings bugs to light. Apparently, Horace and the Spiders has a bug. If you walk backwards, that's assuming left, on the first level, after clearing a few obstacles, you'll find yourself on screen 2. I can't quite make this happen. Horace couldn't go left either at this point. Maybe I'm missing something. Anyway, on to chart toppers. Hang on, I thought we'd done this already. Maybe we should pick games that are not in the last one that are in here. Otherwise, we'll be talking about the same games over again. So let's start at the bottom. And
can we just say that? Yeah, I know Manic Mine has been knocked down to number 4 in this one, though. That is sacrilege.
Anyway, number 10, Valhalla, a sort of heralded animated adventure, although it was quite slow.
Well, it was written in BASIC, wasn't it?
Was it? I thought it must have had machine code for the graphics because they were all frame by frame animation.
Yeah, they were, weren't they? So I think it was a little bit of machine code and some BASIC as well.
All right. We've already talked about Ant Attack at number 9. Kong from Ocean at number 8.
the game where it's almost impossible to get up the ladders.
It's very, and the collision detection when you're jumping over barrels can be hit and miss as well.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, quite playable once you get used to all the little issues.
I used to enjoy. I used to be able to loop it again and again and again. When I was a kid, somehow.
No, I don't
know
think
how.
I've ever got beyond. I've gotten to the third screen, but never beyond that.
I think once I got past the first screen, I just knew exactly where to jump and everything to be able to complete it, and could just do it again and again and again.
Okay, number 7, Zip Zap Imagine.
I don't think I've ever played it. Is that the one where you can shoot the people instead of
No, that's Zoom. That's at number 2 going up. But Zip Zap was a robot that had continual movement, and there was a bit of sort of, I wouldn't say Berserk or Robotron about it, but I don't think it was a good game for them to release, to be honest. We've done Trans Am. Horace and the Spiders at number 5.
Yeah.
That was just a rip-off of Panic. Well, the third screen was just a rip-off of Panic.
Yeah, it was. The bit where you had to jump over the chasm on the spider's threads was quite fun.
Yeah, it wasn't hardly taxing. However, when I tried to do a video for it, I didn't do it properly and died. Anyway, moving on. Number 4, Manic Miner, we've talked about. 3, Flight Simulation, we've talked about. Number 2, Zoom is the one where you can fly and shoot people. And it has bad use of attributes bad use of the bright command, because the little men are all bright, and if you look at it on a modern monitor or TV, not even a TV, modern monitor, you will notice it stands out quite badly in blue sky.
So you could really see the bright then.
Oh yes,
the fact that
yes.
Yeah.
Obviously, we skipped all of the adverts, so we didn't break up the flow. But did any of them stand out, Geoff?
Jumping Jack is a brilliant advert. That's quite early on in the magazine as well.
A lot of early Imagine adverts were quite good. I liked our Diddums and Mola Mole and things. I thought they all stood out.
Yeah. I don't know who they got to do them, but they were a very good artist and had a very good style. It was kind of slightly cartoony, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Next one was the ColecoVision. It makes it look brilliant.
The ColecoVision was a good system. It had, I think it came with Kong, didn't it? As a sort, I don't know if it was a built-in game, but it came with it as a sort of star game, the game that would sell it.
Yeah, it was its killer app.
Exactly.
I don't know how many sold in this country. It must be quite hard to get your hands on a ColecoVision. And the Lothlorien one.
Is that the one that's got the weirdo from AC/DC on the front?
Yeah. Yeah, but it doesn't look good. I mean, he really stands out anyway. But yeah, I think that's a brilliant advert.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about the weird cuddly tortoise with guns and things.
It's juxtaposition.
Okay, Two-Gun Turtle, the game. It's a turtle.
You go from it's almost as you go from left to right, it gets darker. It's like a cartoony Two-Gun Turtle on the left and some zombie AC/DC guy on the right. And that kind of bug just looks like it could be either A, minding its own business, or B, a bit aggressive.
It looks like a lobster, doesn't it?
Sinister. Yeah, it does. But it doesn't look threatening, does it?
No.
Oh, and what's that thing peeking out from the rocks?
The deadly mouse of Lothlorien.
Yeah. What about you, Paul? Did any of the adverts stand out for you?
Yes. 3 Deep Space. Could that effect work on a Spectrum with its limited resolution and colour? Well, it's a 16K game written by Mike Singleton. Yes, the very same person you're thinking of. To get effective 3D images, the red and green areas need to be offset by the right amount. But surely the Spectrum would get colour clash. I have a pair of 3D glasses that I got with C&VG many years ago. Here we are. You control a ship on the left, and you can move in and out of the screen. Aliens fly right to left, again at different depths. If you get the right depth, you can shoot them. The effect didn't really work, at least for me. There was no 3D effect at all. Oh dear. Well, that was the festive issue of Computer and Video Games from 1983. Well, to be honest, it wasn't very much of a festive episode, was it? Nothing about the season mentioned at all, apart from the cover of the magazine. So let's play a game then. This is the official Father Christmas game, released by Alternative Software in 1989. Not sure how you go about getting a license for something that, better not spoil things. Anyway, the game has several parts, none of which really fill me with joy. Shame really. The first part reminds me of Microgen's Manic Mechanic, also known as Automania, and here Father Christmas has to collect bits of his sled. It's a small house, but there are elves that run around, and if you are carrying a bit of sled at the time, they will knock it out of your hands and place it randomly somewhere else in the house. Because these elves are random, it makes it quite annoying at times. Once you've found a piece, you then take it back to the sled, and it automatically adds it for you. That is, if you don't run into an elf on the way, and then it's back into the house for the next piece. The pieces are placed randomly, and sometimes you get a few of them back to back without going very far into the house. All of this is done against the clock, and in this case, the moon. Keep an eye on that, or use an infinite time poke. Mostly in silence, the graphics are quite nice, but the animation is a bit jerky. The background stuff, though, looks really nice. Sometimes it's tricky to get onto the ladders as well. A bit of a throwback to Ocean's Kong. If you can take the monotony, you'll eventually get all of the pieces of the sled, and it's on to the next part. And here you have to choose some presents, and then on the next screen you have to grab them. No real need for this, is there? Anyway, moving on onto the final part of the game, and now you have to head off to the skies, around different parts of the world, and deliver the presents, avoiding clouds, birds and flying aircraft. Once you've located a blue arrow indicating where the present should be dropped, you press the key and then guide it to its destination using left and right. When complete, you go to a different part of the world and do the same thing. That is, if you can find where to drop the present. Sometimes you just hang there, scrolling, for ages, in silence, with no animation, watching the moon slowly vanish towards the end of the game. As I've said, the best thing about the game is probably the graphics, and really the present collection and delivery could have been left out, with a larger house being added and different sleds to create. One to forget then, unless you're really bored or really drunk. Retro Computers, or Retro Games Limited, have produced a variety of modern equivalents of old classic hardware. The C64 Mini, the Atari 400 Mini, the A500, and now of course the new Spectrum, simply called the Spectrum. I have seen several comments on various forums and websites about this, some excited about the product, others less enthusiastic, expressing anger, dismay, and even taking their own time to post negative things. For myself, this is obviously linked to the Sinclair machine and its history. It is therefore of interest. I have purchased other similar items like the aforementioned A500, the Elite Bluetooth recreated Spectrum, the original Vega, the Spectrum Next and the ZX Touch. This then is another in the line of modern pieces of kit that I want to review. I purchased this and was eager to see what it was like, after the negative comments had been posted even before it had been released. I was a little late in getting mine, collecting it on the 30th of November, 8 days after release, but now it's time to have a play. The package is nice, looking similar to the original Sinclair box, and on the back we get a glimpse of the 48 included games. Some notable ones there, so that should be pleasing to some people. Inside we have a nice secondary box, and inside that we get a USB power lead, but no adapter. Why do companies do this anyway? There's also a reduced manual, a copy of the Mini Crash magazine, a HDMI cable, and of course the unit itself. Next to a real Spectrum, you can't really tell the difference from first looks, other than the different logo and name on the case. It's a pity this has been done, but I guess there were legal problems. There's been a few negative comments around this as well. turning the machine around, and the rear has an all-new set of connections. There's a HDMI port, output in 720p at 50 or 60 Hz, a USB-C socket for power, a USB-A socket to one side for things like USB sticks, and 3 other USB-A sockets for what the manual states as controllers. Not sure I know of many games that use 3 separate controllers. Anyway, it can be used with keyboards and that sort of thing. At each end there's a button. One is the home button for going back to the main menu, and the other is the power button. Once it's all connected up, which is very easy, and powered on, you start with a few simple setup screens. The first is to select a language, and the second is for display preferences, 50 or 60 Hz. All of this is covered in the manual, that weirdly you have to download. The pamphlet that comes with it only covers basic setup, and that's a bit disappointing. Once past this, we get into the menu, or as the manual calls it, the carousel. The picture is as you would expect from HDMI, but I was worried about timings because it uses that. We'll test that later on. You can scroll through each of the 48 games supplied pre-installed, and each one has an intro screen and control information. Control is via the keyboard, which is a nice touch, but can also be used with a joypad, which we'll get onto later. You can also set things like border size. But let's get into the first game then, Manic Miner. When selected, you can add stars to this game to make it one of your favourites. And the carousel can also be set to order the games in a variety of different ways. To get to the setting, you press space when in the carousel, and you can now tweak away, getting the settings you prefer. Things like border size, CRT effects, extended colours and frames. There's not much choice here compared to a full-blown emulator, where you can set up things like speech units and different pieces of hardware. But then again, I think this is not aimed at that sort of audience. If it was, it would probably have had an expansion port. Frames are background images that can be placed behind the games, and there are a few to choose from that come pre-installed. You simply select the frame and carry on playing the game. Another thing you can do is go into Classic mode, and this drops you straight into Sinclair Basic, or rather, a version of Basic that comes with it. The machine doesn't use the original Sinclair ROMs, but if you prefer, and you have some emulators kicking about, you'll find the ROM files in there, and you can simply copy them to your USB stick, into the ROMs folder, and the machine will automatically use them. While playing a game, you can save at any point, into 4 different slots. You can also rewind gameplay, ideal if you make a fatal error. The original Spectrum rubber keyboard was a bit of a Marmite thing. You either loved it or hated it. Personally, I loved it. Whether or not it should have been included on this new model is debatable. People have said it should have been like the Spectrum Next keyboard, or even the Spectrum Plus would have been an improvement. But having a Spectrum Next keyboard would increase the price, and having a Spectrum Plus keyboard would, well, not go back to the original rubber keyed days. Once you get bored of the included games, which include some modern titles, you can easily add your own. Drop a few game files onto a USB stick, like this one shaped like a microdrive, and you're ready to play. The unit accepts quite a wide variety of file types like SNA, Z80, ROM, TZX and PZX. If your game is a multi-load across multiple cassettes, you can set up a media list, which will swap the tapes in and out as required. Once you're ready, put the USB stick into the Spectrum, boot up, and select the USB icon, pretty much like the A500 Mini. You'll then see a list of folders and you can navigate to where your games are. If your game has certain requirements, once selected, you can go to the game settings by pressing space. And here you can set things like the mode between 48, 128 and +2, the border size, the tape loading speed, ULA plus option, default joystick or gamepad, and can even map various buttons to the joypad itself. Very useful. Most of this is pretty easy to follow once you get to know the keys to press and when. While we're talking about the USB drive, you can also use this to do a firmware update. Download the latest version and put it on the root of the drive, plug it in, boot up, go to the options screen and advanced options and system information, and here it will tell you if the version you've downloaded is newer than the one you have installed. You can then choose to upgrade if needed, and this is quite quick and easy. When you're in classic mode, you can write basic programs as you would expect, and even save them out onto the USB stick. A nice inclusion, but not sure it will be used much though. The unit does have a virtual keyboard, but I don't really see the point. It's got a real one. And now onto the joypad itself. You can buy one called the Gamepad to go with the Spectrum, and to be honest, it's exactly the same as the one that came with the A500 Mini. It's just painted black and has some different logos on it. It works as you would expect. It's not going to give you the feeling of an expensive, ultra gamer hardcore continual use device, but it works fine, just like any other joypad. If you don't have a joypad, you can always plug in numerous other controllers, and there are config options built in to select which ones you need. Right, on to important things now, like timings. The game I always use for this is Aquaplane from Quicksilver. This has a split border effect that will only line up if the timings are spot on. And they're not, sadly, and that's strange. I couldn't see any settings to change anything connected to timings, and I even tried resetting the unit and using 60 Hz, and it still wasn't working as it should. Maybe a firmware update will fix it at some point. The unit does support ULA+, so games designed to use extra colours will work fine. Here's one of my games, Toofy's Winter Nuts, and as you can see, the extra colours are showing nicely. So, to sum up, there will always be people who object to paying money for this. There are always going to be people who say that they can do the same things with a Raspberry Pi. And yes, you probably can. It might not look as nice, but you can get a Spectrum emulator running on almost anything these days. So who is this actually aimed at? The older person who wants to relive a few games from the past? Probably not, but this can be done via emulation or cheaper means. Maybe hardcore collectors of all things Spectrum then? Maybe, but going on some of the ridiculous prices on eBay, that might be right. Maybe long-time Spectrum fans like myself then? Well, that all depends on how you look at things. Is this just another cash-making project, living off the nostalgia? Well, you could level that criticism at any piece of hardware that recreates old technology. The C64, the C65, the new Commodore PET motherboards, the mini SNES, etc, etc. And even those knockoff Chinese multi-game things full of pirated Master System games. Whatever your opinion, my choice was to buy it, review it, and play with it. For what it's worth, I like it. I'm not amazed by it, nor am I willing to defend it against the criticism. That's down to the individuals. It is, after all, only an emulator inside a case made to look and feel like the old Spectrum. I do not regret buying it at all. Whether it will be used as much as my real Spectrums, well, I doubt it. I did get to like it the more I tested it though. It feels like a real Spectrum physically, and most games work. It's just a pity that the timings weren't right, or maybe I'm just missing something, but I did try a lot of things. It's a well-made unit with a nice interface and some good features. It plays Spectrum games on modern televisions and looks and feels like the real thing. It does what it says on the box, and it does it well. I'll leave you with this little gem from the manual, in the troubleshooting section if the unit gets hot. The Spectrum contains a powerful processor that works very hard to recreate the authentic experience of the original ZX Spectrum. Take that to mean what you like. For quite a while now, the Commodore 64 community has had the ability to chat live on the internet using their original machines rather than emulation or modern browsers. This was achieved by the development of a cartridge plugged into the Commodore 64's cartridge port, set up to use Wi-Fi and connected to a custom chat system. Now the team have produced a version for the Spectrum, the Chat64 Spectrum Edition. The interface is about the size of a large joystick interface and has an edge connector and a button that doubles as a light to indicate whether you're connected or not. It plugs into the expansion port of the Spectrum, but sadly does not have a pass-through port, so this has to be the last device in the chain if you want to use things like ZX HD. For testing purposes, I'm using the following setup: a standard 48K Spectrum with ZX HD interface to give a better picture, and the Chat64 is plugged in at the back of this. To get online, you have to follow a few steps. When you turn on the Spectrum, The cartridge will automatically load the required software into RAM. Next, you will need to set up your Wi-Fi. You enter the name of your Wi-Fi and the password to access it. You will be told that this has been successful. You will then have another option in the main menu, Server Setup. Here you enter the default server for the chat service. It took me a few attempts, but eventually I connected. Going back to the main menu, and you now have another option, Account Setup. This will give you details of your MAC address needed for the next step. Next, you have to register the cartridge on Chat64's website. You go to the registration form, put in your name, email address and MAC address, and they will email you the registration ID. Back to the Spectrum and enter this along with your nickname. I know, let's have ZXPJ. And then when you go back to the menu, you will now have more options. Here you can get a list of users currently on the system. And back to the main menu, and you can start chatting by pressing 7. I grabbed a glass of wine and immediately was told there was a new version that I could download. I did this, which was very quick, and this updated the firmware of the cartridge. Back in the chat, and the last message was from a few days ago. I typed out a few messages and it seemed to work okay, but there was no one online to reply. I then had to wait until I had more time to try this out again because there were so many things happening around the next few episodes. I suppose this is the limitation of something like this. It's dependent on the number of users who have it and of course the number of users using it. I can see that, if enough people had one and were interested in chatting using original hardware, it would be great. I tried this a few days later and it seems I keep missing the times when people are chatting. I'll keep on trying though. And I did see another user that looks like they have a Spectrum as well, based on their nickname. At some point, I'm bound to get lucky. Phew, well, that about wraps it up for this extended Christmas episode. I hope you all enjoyed it. Have a great festive season, don't drink too much, and I'll see you all next year.